Hello everyone, JRDL96 here with a brand new reaction. As you can tell by the title, it's another Markiplier related video, and it's a game theory video. So the last game theory video we watched related to Mark was the Unis Honest one back in 2020. But if you want to talk about mostly just Mark, it was back in 2018 talking about the entire, little cinematic universe essentially that Mark created with the egos like Damien / Darkiplier, Warstash, and some of the how connected all these particular videos are to one another. But this video in particular is pretty interesting because it's about In Space with Markiplier, and this came out before the release of Part 2. Now, you're probably wondering, why is this coming out after Part 2? It's because I don't know. But I wanted to see something. I want to try something here. This is the reason why. I wanted to see if we can get certain things right before this comes out, because I'm filming this prior to the release of Part 2. And I want to see when, Part 2, does come out, when we do our reaction to Part 2, I want to see what we get right and what we get wrong, and then you can come back to this video and see what I got right and what we got wrong, essentially. But the title alone is pretty interesting. The end of Markiplier, and the thumbnail is pretty, cool. Mark kind of splitting to Warstash and Darkiplier, but I noticed that MatPat changed the thumbnail because originally the Markiplier, one was essentially the face he makes before we push him into the cryo room to fix it. He's like that. I thought that was pretty funny and cool looking. But anyways, enough rambling. Let's see what MatPat has to say and what he thinks could happen. And it's kind of funny that he was a part of this project too. But I guess he wasn't given the inside scoop by Mark. But anyways, let's just get right into it. So without further ado, let's react to this video, shall we?
Always did have a choice.
You have a choice here.
This is the final confrontation.
I love the
Do you
videos.
even know who you are?
I do, and soon
I do.
they will too. Hello, Internet! Welcome
I
to
like
Game Theory, the show that's officially decided that a multi-choice YouTube series is in fact a video game. That's right. Today we're talking about the wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey story of In Space with Markiplier, the follow-up to Mark's first YouTube original, A Heist with Markiplier. Both projects have you teaming up with Mark to navigate through a choose-your-own-adventure style quest. Of course, things don't go as planned, and the resulting chaos has you whip-panning your way through a sea of interesting places and people.
You gotta separate your bones from your meat.
Speaking of, he was also in Heist.
Yes.
I mean, the man has a great point there. You do have to separate the bones from the meat. And in outer space, things get even more interesting.
Chaotic.
Engines are
Looking good, Captain.
Really, the supporting cast for this thing is out of this world. Chef's kiss, mwah, 10 out of 10. Speaking of things that are out of this world, seamless segue for the win, as you might expect from anything sci-fi, In Space doesn't just mess with branching pathways, but also with time loops, wormholes, and the multiverse. All concepts that boil down to one thing: lore. Now, if this was any other project, I probably wouldn't be making this video. Sure, there's lots of branching paths and cool Easter eggs hidden inside of them, but the lore would be right there for you.
Imagine that
for
was a
anyone
Choose
that's
Your Own Adventure
diligent enough
itself.
to dig through the various decision trees.
Oh, jeez.
But this is a Markiplier project. And if you've ever seen my past videos on Markiplier,
Of course.
the projects he touches tend to have a bit more bubbling underneath the surface.
Well,
For
the
uninitiated,
first
Markiplier
one,
has quite
essentially.
a large amount of lore on his channel, with characters ranging from Wilford Warstash to
Wilford,
Characters that
Darkiplier.
started off as little one-off jokes that eventually became fully fleshed out with their own backstories and motivations. We've dissected some of this lore before,
And
but
who
with
killed
In Space
Markiplier.
Part 1 being Markiplier's biggest and most ambitious project ever,
Yes.
I suspected that these personalities might be making a return. Sure, you can play through In Space to kill off Mark as many times as you want. Totally fine if that's what you want to do, great.
The
go for it.
masochist
But there
sure
were
doesn't
also moments
mind.
that kept setting off my theorist senses, namely the constant or one-off lines that seem to imply a greater history to this world. Lines like,
Do you even know who you are?
sprinkled throughout told me that there was a mystery here. A big reveal waiting in the wings to happen in part 2, so I dug in. And let me tell ya, there is a lot hidden here. Buckle up, theorists, because I'm about to launch
Buckle
your
the
brains
fuckle
into
up,
the
people.
stratosphere. I think I've figured out what the main climax of In Space with Markiplier Part 2 is gonna be, and despite all the hints that Mark's been throwing out, I don't think it's what you'd expect. Also, before I get too deep
could be
into this, I'm sure
misleading.
some of you are thinking that I've cheated, that I'm gonna spoil the ending because I was in the show. The truth is, I wouldn't be making this video if I did know the ending. Mark is a good friend, and he's worked really hard on this project. I wouldn't want to ruin the surprise that he has for his audience. When working on the show, I never saw the whole thing. I was only exposed to the parts that I was in. TLDR here, I don't want to act as the Tom Holland of this MCU Marvel universe. This is being
That's so
treated like
funny.
any other video that we do. We're dissecting clues that are presented within the videos
The
that
Tom
we have
Holland
at
of
our
the
disposal, and that's it.
Markiplier
We're not
Connected
pulling from
Universe.
any extra insider information. So in my initial playthrough of In Space on GT Live, I pointed out that we needed to be wary of Celsi, the head of Cryo, played by
Celsi.
Pamela Horton.
All right, so Pam, always important to note with these episodes, as we've done in a previous theory, Pam tends to be the same character in different settings.
You see, Pam's most notable character to date has been Celine,
Celine.
from Who Killed Markiplier.
That's-
a
I still
four-part
call her
murder
that
mystery
regardless
released back in
what character
2017
she
about a
is.
friendly poker night that goes south. And when it comes to Markiplier lore, this series really is the foundation for his MCU, as it provides us the backstories.
Yeah, the
for his
backstories of
recurring
Darkiplier and
characters. In it, a
Warstash,
pompous
essentially.
jerk named
And
After
Aftermark.
dies. Yep, that is officially
Yeah.
what he's known as in the canon. And the primary suspects include his childhood friend
Damien.
the mayor,
I know I'm supposed to be a
You're
leader in
this
this scenario,
scenario.
but I can't help but feel lost.
Damien's sister, and Mark's ex-wife, the mystical Celine.
Something tells me this seemingly significant event is actually a footnote in a much larger mystery unfolding in our midst.
And the wacky, mustache-twirling,
Whoa.
gun-toting
Colonel.
Needs a bit of
Burley!
mathematization.
Life
It
needs a
turns
bit
out
of
Actor
math.
Mark's death was all part of a greater plan. Thanks to some magic within the mansion, Actor Mark is able to take over Damien's body, while Damien and Celine both take over your
Yours,
body, which
our
gives rise
body,
to Mark's
and we
most
they
infamous
become
character,
dark
the
and
red
essentially
blue-filtered
keeping us
Darkiplier.
in the
Meanwhile,
damn
seeing his
fucking
friends
mirror.
die and come back to life takes a bit
Thinks
of a
that
toll
death
on the
is
old Colonel,
meaningless
which causes
and
him
he
to go
goes
mad.
insane
All
and
these
diverges
characters then
into
recur
becoming
throughout
Warstash.
Markiplier's other narrative videos. When Darkiplier suddenly shows up in an ending of A Date with Markiplier, we know that he's connected to Damien and Celine.
Well, the
thanks to
thing
the
is,
same
Date
red blue
came out
filter and
way
recurring
before Who
theme of
Killed
choice.
came
I
out.
won't force this on you. You have a
Choice
choice.
here. Of giving people a choice.
And the Colonel's story continues in
Of course,
Wilford
Wilford
Mother-Loving
Mother-Loving
Warstash, where we
Warstash.
see the detective from Who Killed Markiplier hunting down the now deranged Colonel, transformed into the reality-warping killer/journalist
Wilford Warstash.
Name after name after name, just so you could distance yourself from the real name you should be called.
Wow.
Very odd.
How the hell did you do that?
So, when In Space features a surprise appearance by Wilford boogieing down to 70s music wearing
Yeah.
largely the same outfit he was
No,
wearing in
that's
Mother-Loving
black.
Warstash, you know that these canons are going to be somehow connected. Given those connections, I did some digging on Pam's new character, Celsi. Just before
Celsi.
the release of In Space Part 1, Mark posted some photos to Instagram showing the credentials for various crew members aboard the ship. Bert, Gunther, and of course, Celsi. But did you notice anything different about Celsi's card? All of them
Her
have their
name's
faces
kinda scratched out.
but Celsi's, instead of the typical black, is scratched out in
White.
white, with a very distinctive blue and red accent. A motif that's been used time and time again whenever Darkiplier is kicking around. You also very obviously have a name connection. Celsi, Celine.
Celine.
Very similar. So could these two actually be the same character? Could Celsi in this new series actually be the seer Celine from Who Killed Markiplier? The answer is, surprisingly, no. Mark has
Yeah, I
definitely
don't
put some
think that
parallels
they're-
in there, but I couldn't find a linchpin to say that the two
I
were
don't know if
definitely
they're
one and
essentially the same
So why put
character,
it
but
on
it could
red
just be
herring
like one of
that?
those
Well,
things
just
where they
because
look similar
Celsi
to one
isn't
another,
Celine
like an
doesn't
alternate
mean that
universe,
Celine isn't
essentially.
aboard the ship. During In Space, if you choose to fire all weapons at the wormhole, Mark opens a locker that's covered in post-it notes. You've got references to Tiny Box Tim, Worf Stash, Mark's undying love for the captain, but take a look at the bottom post-it. It says, Doreen Celsi Connection. Okay, we've talked about Celsi, but then who is Doreen? This one's not super complicated. On our tablet, we have a list of crew members with the name Doreen L. Whitaker on it. Later, when an old woman glitches into into reality to offer us some cookies, Mark refers to her as Mrs. Whitaker. So I think it's
Yeah,
pretty
that's
safe to
Whitaker
say that
right
they're one and
there.
the same. But what does that have to do with Celsi? Or Celine, for that matter? Well, take a look at Doreen's clothes. The outfit Doreen's wearing is a flowy black dress covered in a celestial pattern. Stars, planets, that kind of thing. Which is incredibly similar to the dress that was worn by the mystical Celine throughout Who Killed
but
Markiplier.
hers
But
is
that's not
just
all.
stars,
In one of the secret
essentially.
endings, Doreen appears and says some very familiar sounding lines.
But that's your choice. You always did have a choice.
I won't force this on you. You have a choice here.
Celine as a character has always
Yeah,
been
some
about
people are
choice,
saying
talking
that
about
too,
giving us a
that
choice
there's
or
someone
lack of choice that we
connected
have. So
there
it's
with
important that
Celine and
Doreen
Whitaker.
is saying these exact same things. And
It's
finally,
funny that
Doreen
she
gives
kind
us
of
this
looks
very
like an
important
older
line.
So, Mrs.
Pam.
Whitaker,
That's what I was saying. That's what I
I'm not
said.
married anymore, young man.
A fact that gets repeated a couple times.
I told you I'm not married anymore.
Why are you so aware of this detail about a seemingly random character? Well, it's designed to point us in the direction of another character we know. The only other main character within the franchise to be divorced, Celine. She was divorced from the actor Mark in Who Killed. In short, Celsi was the logical stepping stone. A hint from Mark to us theorists that Celine was in fact here, just not in the body that we expected her to be in. Not in Celsi, but in Doreen.
You gotta
So
remember,
Celine
Celine
here,
is
and
not
Worf
necessarily
Stash is
around
definitely here.
anymore.
Then where are the other characters from the story? Where are actor Mark and, most importantly of all,
Dark.
Markiplier? Well, back in May of 2019, Mark released another video as part of his Markiplier-connected universe,
Damien.
This video, if it wasn't obvious, focuses on the character Damien and the frosty limbo that he and Celine exist in after the events of Who Killed Markiplier. In it, we see Damien going through a looping cycle day after day until his
Yep, a
routine
time
is
loop, and
broken
then
by
he
the
ends up
evil
in this
actor
void
Mark.
with
Narcissistic
actor
as
Mark.
ever and obsessed with having someone play the villain,
Villain.
to his hero.
You don't realize
This place is a dream, a never-ending starring role as the hero. But what is a hero without a villain?
you honestly think
You're the hero
in all of this?
Well, of course I am.
In the end, Celine cedes control of Darkiplier to Damien alone so he can get his
He could
revenge
take
on
care
actor
of him.
Mark while she goes to rest.
You can't
She's
come back
sleeping.
from this. It'll change you.
Well, he did say he wanted me to be the villain. Maybe he should be more careful with his wishes.
Notice the language here. This repeated emphasis on the battle between a hero
Hero
and
and
a
a
villain.
villain.
Now look at In Space Part 1. At the start of the story, when we're introduced to our head engineer and primary Mark, he gives us lines that seem to imply that we go way back.
Just like old times, eh, Captain?
And then later, in the majority of the endings, we're confronted by an old version of Mark, one who again seems
Santa
to share
over
a
here.
history with us.
Friend of mine, or close confidant. Exchanges of conversation.
One who apparently has something to apologize for.
I'm sorry about a lot of things.
And someone who's been waiting a long time to try and stop our apparently evil plans?
I can't let you in.
Yeah, it's weird because we're just making these random choices, and apparently we're the villain in this whole
He
thing.
tells us that it's time to move on.
It's all in the past. Because I beat you.
It's weird. None of this seems to fit. Like, I know that we screwed up the multiverse via our choices as the captain, but it doesn't seem like this is the way that this character would respond. It seems like he's commenting on things that are outside of the story that we were presented. And he is. The thing is, we've seen one character say all of these lines before. Repeat all of these same ideas.
Friend of mine. Oh, close confidant.
Oh, my friend.
It's all in the past.
But that's all in the past.
Oh my god.
Resident Evil. The hero.
Where's the villain?
What is a hero without a villain?
This isn't just any Mark, this is actor Mark. He's
As an
now in the
older
world
one?
that he's always dreamed
Well,
of.
actor
He's the
Mark
hero.
does
He's
appear
the one that gets
in
to save the
one of the
multiverse from
choices.
evil. Mark put it like this during his breakdown of Damien.
He's in this world where he gets to play out the leading
Role
role
of any story he wants.
He can't imagine other people
Not
not
loving
loving
that.
that. He's just a narcissist. He can't even imagine that he's wrong.
But then why is Mark so determined to defeat us? It seemed like the captain was meant to just be us, the viewer, put into this adventure, but I'm not entirely convinced that that's the case. Even Doreen has us questioning our identity.
Can't say I'm surprised. You always were stubborn. Do you even know who you are? Do you feel like you've been here before? Or is this just history repeating itself?
She knows us. We are Damien. We are Darkiplier. Someone Celine always thought was
Someone
stubborn,
was
someone
saying
who's
that
been stuck in a
too.
repeating loop of events. Someone who keeps being told that they need their rest, just like the signs next to our cryopod tell us.
Get some sleep. You look tired.
In fact,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
a lot of small stuff hidden
That's
in here
right.
too. Like how
Yeah,
in Who
yeah,
Killed
yeah.
Markiplier, we get this line from the detective.
Maybe I shouldn't have
Trusted someone who goddamn gorgeous.
And in Space, we regularly hear things like,
Look, I've never laid eyes on a creature so handsome. Oh, you're beautiful.
we are once again considered attractive. This is why, despite the fans crying out to see Darkiplier as a part of the series, he's yet to show up. We've been inside his body the whole time. We've been looking through his eyes. It's also why actor Mark is so determined to beat us. Notice what happens during all the endings of part 1. We're sent to a place outside the known universe.
Be advised, designated location outside known universe.
I know. That's the point.
A black void with blue lighting. But is it just me, or does this look a little bit familiar? Like, say, the black nothingness with blue that we see enveloping Damien in Who Killed Markiplier. Or, again, in the ending of the video, Damien.
Yes,
The
that's what I
problem
was
is,
thinking
we don't
too.
remember who we are. On multiple occasions, we have Celine, in the body of Doreen, trying to jog our memories.
Makes you feel like you've been through all this before. Do you understand, dearie?
She's trying to bring Damien to the surface. She's trying to remind him of who he is and what he has to do. And so now, with the universe being rebooted, I believe that's exactly what we're going to start to see. Damien beginning to remember. Darkiplier becoming who he was meant to be. The reboot means the stage is now set for actor Mark and Darkiplier to have their final showdown.
Oh,
After
boy.
all these years, they can finally put to rest this
I would
quest
love
for
to see
revenge
that,
that's been keeping them
but
going for
I don't
so
know.
long. Recently, Mark released a teaser for part 2 full of codes that translated to, quote, 7 gods aligned, a key formed from their
Yeah,
union.
someone
The
saw
lock
seen that shit
hides
too.
in time. 7 gods, you say? Remind me how many characters were in Who Killed Markiplier? Oh yeah, 7. Celine, Damien, Wharfstash, actor Mark, even the detective, the chef, and the butler. The last 3 of which appear as frame-perfect glitches in the endings of In Space. Basically, what I
Wow.
expect we're building towards is a reunion of all these characters towards the true canon ending of the whole series. An ending that'll put an end to the Darkiplier actor Mark feud. Or maybe reverse time back to undo the events of Who Killed Markiplier. That
Oh,
is why we've been
shit.
getting all these noir-themed hints throughout his recent videos. It's a callback to the overall tone and noir moments of Who Killed Markiplier. We're building to the climactic ending of the Markiplier cinematic universe. An ending that leads us
I love
back
that.
to where it all began. But hey,
That's just a theory. Oh my God.
A game theory. I'll see you in space on May 2nd.
Oh boy. Man, that's pretty interesting. So he's essentially saying that we, the captain, are somehow Damien, essentially. We are Dark, essentially. Yeah, I could kind of see where you can say, okay, maybe, but there's one thing that I am surprised he didn't mention at one point. You know, because I mentioned it in my, in part 3 of my reaction to part 1. You know, the moment when, after we take out the fire, and then we hear this random Mark voice in this weird tone just go, Captain? And we turn around, we're in this void. This nothingness void that's somewhat has a bluish hue. And then we see in our cryopod this being with glowing blue eyes in trying to get out of the cryopod. And I saw people comment on my reaction saying, I don't think that's Damien. That might be us, the viewer, the captain. Okay, you can say that. You never know. But here's the thing that I feel like might not be the case. Because remember, in another scenario during the whole adventure, when we are with that Mark and that the other lady, the badass one, looking one, the one who goes, have we been here before? Her. I don't even know what her name is, what her character name is, but she and Mark are with us as we get transported back to the front of the ship, essentially. And then we see somebody in the captain's cryopod, trying to get out, and Mark tells us, hey, open it. And then we open it, and inside is literally Mark sitting there in the fetal position, shaking back and forth, looking at us, saying, "That's not me." Yes, that might be a bit of a stretch, but you gotta remember, too, with Warstash's appearance in Part 1, when he comes in, when we find him in his Wilfred Bubba-loving Warstash attire. Why would he be in that attire when that was essentially a video that was supposed to tie in the gap between who killed Markiplier and the present? Why would he go back to, the Disco Inferno Man, the rejected, the Wiggles reject? Why would he go back to that place? Unless the whole multiverse, thing that we're doing is affecting everything within this connected universe. Like, kind of somewhat... Like, I feel like it's kind of like somewhat similar to the whole thing with No Way Home's, premise, when how the villains get taken from a certain point in their timelines and their respective universes, essentially. But then again, Warstash already doesn't obey the laws of physics, and he kind of does that anyways. But that kind of that's kind of why I feel like Damien is essentially in the cryopod with the glowing blue eyes, because in Damien, when Actor Mark tries to, do something, possess him or kill him, essentially, in this void, Damien's eyes start to glow blue before, Celine comes in with the axe and, throws it right at Actor Mark. Now, I honestly do not think, yes, I do know that he mentioned the whole thing with the whole, other character, the seven gods. Yeah, that kind of makes sense with the whole thing with the other characters. But the thing is, the butler is not essentially the butler. It's just a member of the crew, essentially. Tyler's character. In Heist, Tyler was a zombie, and Robert Rex was essentially a prison guard. And the detective, Rice Pirate's character wasn't necessarily a detective. He was like the head of the whole prison, essentially. Oh no, I don't know what the warden. I think that was what he was. But in this, he's the head of he's in charge of the asteroid defense system, the ADS, and everything. So it's kind of weird seeing them play these different characters, essentially. And it's pretty much Actor Mark. I kind of had this feeling already, too. Actor Mark is portraying himself as the hero, while we, are essentially in, in the ending of Part 1, when he's old and decrepit, looking like Santa Claus, he's the hero and we are the villain, essentially. When we are just, the dumb person that's clearly just going through these different endings and different routes throughout this whole adventure. So, I don't know. But again, so my final predictions. Now, this is being filmed before the release of Who Killed In Space with Markiplier Part 2. Now, who do I think is going to appear essentially in this? Obviously, I feel like Warstash will appear in this, because essentially he kind of confirmed it himself. Our meeting is in Part 2. But do I think that theory about us being Damien, essentially dark the whole time, is true? I don't think that would be... again, I don't really necessarily think that would be a wise idea. You would want to see Damien, aka Dark, to encounter Mark on his own, as we are the fucking, the bystanders that witnessed this fucking experience. I think that's what Mark himself, deep down, probably knows that's what the fans really want. But, the whole thing with Cecile, or, Celsi, Pam's character, yeah, the name, the certain, the name has the first, initial C, like Celine, and, people were making the connection about her being somewhat related to Miss Whitaker, Doreen. I saw some people say that, but I mistaken Miss Whitaker in my first part of my reaction to part 1 as an older Pam. I don't know. Oh, yeah, that my computer went black for a second. I was kind of afraid there. But I was, that's what I thought that was who it was, because she kind of looked like Pam. I don't know why, but she kind of had that look that kind of looked similar to Pam, or let's say Celine. So I wouldn't be surprised if, like, you know, it turns out that's the case. But, you know, again, I completely forgot about the whole thing that Celine is technically still in the void, still in this limbo herself, sleeping. And it's kind of funny, there's like this running theme about us getting sleep. But essentially, that's everybody getting sleep. But the thing is, with, you know, with Damien, the video itself, with, you know, Celine telling Damien that he needs sleep, she doesn't sleep. She goes to try to hunt down Aftermark. But there's one thing I did not notice when rewatching Damien recently. I rewatched Damien like a couple months ago. And the sequence when Damien gets transported to outside in the woods and starts hearing Celine call out to him, if you listen very closely, you hear Aftermark talking. You hear Aftermark saying Celine too, as if it was Aftermark luring Damien to the lake to have that confrontation with him. Because you kind of hear this, like, as you hear Celine talk, you kind of hear this, like, somewhat narcissistic voice kind of like go, Damien. Like, you kind of hear it if you listen very closely. It's very subtle, but it's so... Like, I didn't notice it. I didn't hear it essentially. I didn't really hear it the first couple times I rewatched it. I'm surprised it took me that long to fucking realize that. But another thing, too, like, I know this is a huge discussion, but another thing, too, that he keeps, like, you know, that he always keeps talking about who killed Markiplier first. You gotta remember, A Date with Markiplier was the first project to be released that kind of started this whole universe, essentially. Because of the whole thing with Darkiplier, that Darkiplier route, and everything like that. And the whole thing about him saying he promised, he'll let me in again. I'm tired of giving people a choice. You have to let me in. All that was, in a sense, when we first saw this, we didn't know that this was going to lead to something bigger, you know, with Who Killed Markiplier, essentially. But, you know, another thing, too, that, you know, that I think Matt Pat forgot to mention, the whole thing with Celine and being the ex-wife of Aftermark, I think there's another thing too. Celine left Aftermark to go with Warstash, essentially. And the whole thing with Warstash the whole thing was essentially Aftermark hated the Colonel. Aftermark hated him with so much, with a burning passion, that he wanted to frame him for the murder of him, and then essentially take over the Colonel's body to be with Celine. That was his original plan, but then when Celine came in, that caused a lot of things, you know, to change. And also, as he puts it, the right people started pointing fingers at the wrong people. So when that happened, Aftermark goes in and steals Damien's body and, you know, locks up Damien and Celine in a void where we end up after we get accidentally shot by the Colonel. And then, you know, Celine and Damien take over the viewer's body as we rise up after being shot. That causes the Colonel to evolve into Warstash. After seeing this, he thinks that death is meaningless. It's just a joke. It's meaningless, and he goes insane. And we become essentially Darkiplier as he takes our body and leaves our, spirit in the mirror, in the cracked mirror of the mansion. So, I don't know, essentially, what could happen in part 2. Do I think Darkiplier will make an appearance? I honestly hope so, but again, I have that bad feeling that he might not be in this. Yes, again, that's what I said initially about part 1, but back then, we didn't know this was setting up to be a 2-parter. We didn't know this was going to be split into 2 parts. We just thought this was just a huge project. And then when I first watched it, there was a hint with that little don't open the door route thing with the whole, before we started the whole route with that. The guy behind the door goes, I'll tell you, there'll be a dark path. That kind of thing. Kind of alluding to dark. Because the voice also alluded in another choice, a musical, which is referring to Yancey, which we do see in a glitched freeze frame as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if Dark does make an appearance in some way. Some people were saying that Dark was that Miss Whitaker was kind of related to Dark, essentially. And was kind of saying all these Darkiplier lines, essentially. But another thing, too, about that one teaser that had all those weird, glitched, letter, codes in it. One of the lines you hear in the trailer is from Who Killed Markiplier, and it was the "Life is Our to Choose," which was said by Damien. So that might be a hint that Damien, aka Dark, could appear in this video, in part 2, essentially. So, my final predictions, I know I've rambled on so long about this, but I'm started to really, this has got me intrigued. So, my final predictions on what could essentially happen. I feel like what's going to happen is, because of the rebooting of the universe, we become the enemy, essentially, I feel like. And it's going to cause this weird chaos where I have this feeling that it's going to lead to either Mark or us sacrificing ourselves to fix the universe, essentially. To fix the timeline, to fix the universe. Or, you could say, that, I feel like also there will be actual endings to this. Unlike part 1. Where part 1 was kind of a vague-ish ending. Where you didn't have the numbered endings like in Heist and Date. And I remember seeing a video, I guess he did, about comments. And he talked about, the fact that his fans went through and got through all of Heist so quickly. He got so mad. He's like, you broke down that so quick. It's essentially, this is his revenge, essentially. He wants us to really look, because this is a bigger project than ever before. So I can understand why. But I feel like in part 2, we will get essentially numbered endings to go through. Because why wouldn't there be? Because I think that's the whole premise of the whole thing. And, I feel like Warstash is going to make an appearance, obviously, as we did see him in. Illinois will probably make an appearance as well. Yancey will make an appearance. Captain Magnum is probably going to make an appearance too, because we do see him when we're in that weird void with, old Mark. He's in the background, and he glitches in and glitches out a couple times. But, I think Darkiplier will make an appearance too, in some capacity. Damien, I think, might make an appearance too, because I feel like with the whole thing about people being, taken from certain points in time, with Warstash being in his, mother-loving Warstash attire, his, Wiggles reject attire, essentially. That kind of is the only, reason why I have that feeling, but again, you never know at the end of the day. But, again, hopefully, you know, as, you know, part 2 does come out, hopefully a lot of our, you know, wishes and hopefully our, you know, hopes for it are true. But as like I did with Heist and with part 1, I'm going to keep my expectations very, very low, because I don't want to go in with so much expectations going in my head, essentially, and setting myself up essentially for disappointment, because I feel like because one of the things I want to see is Dark, but I want to keep that expectation very low, because and keep saying to myself, he's not going to be in it, because then when he does appear, I will be surprised. Essentially, just like what happened when I watched Heist. You know, I said in the very beginning of the video, Dark might not have, I don't think Dark will appear in this. But then, you know, literally within the next 27 minutes of me going through the, you know, the first ending I get, which was the 30th or the 30th or the 31st ending, the Ignorance is Bliss ending, which is the Darkiplier ending. And, you know, there he was. And I was surprised to see him, you know, and it turns out that he was the one who said the so much trouble is always something for so small. No, so much trouble always for so much trouble for all for something so small. That line that was in the trailer. So much trouble all for something so small. You know, that line. But, you know, again, I have no idea. And again, anyways, I feel like it's just going to be more more chaotic as it was in part 1. It's going to probably be 10 times more chaotic than it was in part 1. Someone even threw a theory out there that MatPat, like the whole thing with MatPat essentially is that, you know, with the whole universe rebooting, some people might get replaced essentially, and the person that's going to fill Mark's role will be MatPat. Because I don't know why, but I highly doubt that, because that would be weird. But again, that would kind of an interesting thing to happen, but, you know, you never know. But I think the video will start off with the universe reboot, you know, percentage bar, you know, finishing, and then the whole thing begins, essentially. Like, the percentage bar comes up, you know, finishes up, and then it shuts down and reboots, and then you get the YouTube Originals logo come up, and then, you know, essentially what happens. But another thing too, one more quick thing, I think the Invincible 1 might make an appearance, because in the trailer we saw it just said the word Invincible on it. It didn't say Invincible 2 like in part 1. It kind of threw us off, because we were like, Invincible 2? What is this? Like, that was the one thing that for some reason Mark essentially, you know, didn't want revealed. Like, he could have just revealed Invincible 2 in the trailer, and that would have been fine. But if there's a significant reason behind it, where in the trailer it just says Invincible, but in the final product it just says Invincible 2, there's probably a meaning behind it. But again, who never know. Again, anyways, enough rambling. I've rambled on for too long. It's just like, this is getting to the point where I'm so intrigued by what could happen. So, I'm just going to end this video here. So, hopefully, you know, our predictions might come true. Hopefully our predictions are right, and hopefully, you know, my hopes are true. My hopes come true, you know, with, you know, Dark's appearance and, you know, essentially everybody else. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you think about this theory, and let me know what I got right and what I got wrong. And what did MatPat get right? So let me know in the comments if we were right or wrong. if we were right, if MatPat was right, or if we were wrong, if MatPat was wrong. So let us know in the comments, please. So if you like what you saw here, hit the like button, subscribe, share this video with your friends. Be sure to ring that bell to be part of the notification squad. Be sure to check out my Instagram, because I make cool edits of Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, even myself. I also act as the cosplays on there, so go check it out. And be sure to check out my Tumblr and my Discord in the description as well. So until next time, JRDL96 signing out, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.